Hey there, now, we'll be discussing about handling semi-perishable crops. There are two categories of food crops, perishable and non-perishable crops. What is perishable crops? Perishable crops refer to agricultural products which have short lifespan and must be consumed or processed within a short time after harvest. Examples of perishable crops are tomato, pepper, banana, and leafy vegetables. What is non-perishable crops? Non-perishable crops refer to agricultural products that have a longer shelf life compared to perishable crops. These crops can be stored for extended periods without significant deterioration in quality. Examples of non-perishable crops are grains, legumes, nuts, and root vegetables. Semi-perishable crops fall between the categories of perishable and non-perishable crops in terms of their shelf life and susceptibility to spoilage. While they are not as durable as non-perishable crops, they can last longer than highly perishable crops under proper storage conditions. Semi-perishable crops typically have a moderate shelf life and may require some preservation techniques to extend their usability. Now, we'll tackle about storage requirements for potatoes and other horticultural crops. First, in storage without buildings. Delayed harvest. It is the simplest form of storage for some crops is to leave them in the ground and harvest them only as required. Next, is clamp. In regions with low soil temperatures, a ground clamp can be used for storing potatoes. Potatoes are piled on the ground in a row and covered with 150 to 200 millimeters of straw or coarse grass. Chicken wire is placed around the base to prevent rodent damage, and soil is then dug out around the pile and placed on top of the straw. Here is a visual representation of clamp storage. Next is covered clamp. A covered clamp is a short-term storage solution for potatoes. It involves heaping potatoes on a raised platform and covering them with 10 centimeters of grass or straw. Air can freely circulate through both the product and the straw. A thatch roof overhead provides shade to lower daytime temperatures. Here's a visual representation of it. Now, we'll discuss about storage in multi-purpose buildings. Using slatted boxes or bins. Square boxes with slatted construction, each holding about 1 m³ of potatoes, are a good option for storing potatoes on both small and large scales. The boxes should be raised about 250-300 m above the floor to enable air to circulate freely. Here is a sample of slatted boxes or bins. Next is clamp on floor, a ventilation channel or space created beneath the pile of product. This duct allows for the circulation of air underneath the heap, which helps regulate temperature and moisture levels. The duct helps prevent the accumulation of excess moisture, which can lead to rot or spoilage of the product. Naturally ventilated stores. Storage facilities designed to utilize natural air movement for temperature and humidity control. These stores typically incorporate features such as vents, windows, or openings strategically placed to allow for the flow of air throughout the storage space. Here is a visual representation of how air flow in naturally ventilated stores. Next, larger stores. A storage facility designed to accommodate significant quantities of crops like fruits, vegetables, or grains for extended periods. These facilities typically feature sturdy construction to withstand the weight of the stored product and may include insulation to regulate internal temperature and humidity. Insulation and vapor barriers. Large air-cooled storage requires proper insulation regardless of the climate to prevent freezing in cold regions and reduce operating costs in hot regions. Vapor barriers are crucial to prevent moisture accumulation in the insulation. Designing air-cooled stores is challenging due to fluctuating temperatures, requiring careful assessment of vapor barrier placement or considering non-permeable rigid insulation to resist moisture from either side. Here's a visual representation of how these barriers prevent moisture. Ventilation system. Ventilation in handling semi-perishable crops involves managing airflow to regulate temperature, humidity, and air quality to extend the shelf life of the product. Different ventilation systems can be employed, ranging from simple natural ventilation to manually controlled fans and inlets, and finally to complex automatically controlled dampers and variable speed fans.
Here's a visual representation of how the ventilation system works.
Air distribution plays a vital role in maintaining optimal storage conditions to prolong shelf life. Air is typically circulated through main distribution ducts and lateral ducts embedded in the floor, ensuring uniform airflow across the stored crops. Here's an air distribution diagram. Lastly, the evaporator size. Evaporator size influences the temperature at which it can operate, and the difference in evaporator temperature and store temperature greatly affects the relative humidity of the store. Here's an example of an evaporator. And that's all, thank you.